everyone. I know that this has been long overdue. I have had a lot going on and I've been just having this video just playing in my mind how I was going to put this all together for everyone because I wanted to be respectful and with how this whole situation, how this all played out, how our investigation went. I don't think we realized the turn that this would take. I must warn you that the footage that you're going to see when we investigate the Jefferson Hotel up in the attic in the disappointments room or near the disappointments room, it's sensitive. So I just want to warn everyone that when you are watching this video, it is very sensitive. But first is first, I want to start off with how it went. It wasn't just the Jefferson Hotel that we toured, should I say. We were staying at the Jefferson Hotel, which is haunted in Jefferson, Texas. It used to be a cotton warehouse, and behind the Jefferson Hotel was a place where, you know, steamboats would come and pick up, you know, cotton, the goods, and take them to New Orleans. And besides it being a cotton warehouse, it used to also be a gambling house. It used to be a brothel. The Jefferson Hotel was a bunch of different things back in the day besides being just a hotel. So there is a lot of history within those walls, and especially around that whole town. The whole town is filled with a bunch of different ghost stories. While we were staying there, we went on a ghost tour, and our tour guide, her name is Jody Breckenridge, and she took us around Jefferson and explained the different histories of all the other different hotels and buildings around Jefferson. It was very interesting, especially when we got to the Excelsior Hotel. And what's funny is I was wearing my Poltergeist t-shirt. And I had no idea that Steven Spielberg stayed there. I did not read up on the history before I went, which I should have, but I didn't. So I had no idea. I just ended up putting the shirt on and then going on the ghost tour, which was kind of crazy because Jody, she mentioned how Steven Spielberg and his crew, they were looking for places to film the Sugarland Express. And they were looking for places around that town or around the area to film at. Well, he ended up staying at the Excelsior Hotel that's in Jefferson, and they always, like, the people that work there, they're very tight-lipped. They don't want to say that the hotel is haunted. So they didn't, you know, if you go and you stay there, they're going to be like, no, this place isn't haunted. That's just stories. For some odd reason, that specific hotel, they don't want to acknowledge that their hotel is haunted. Well, Steven Spielberg stayed in room 215. And I believe 215, I believe there was I forgot what his name, but it was a Mr. Gold, I think is his name, who is trying to build a railroad through Jefferson. And I guess the locals decided that, you know, that's not a good idea. We don't want a railroad through our town. So he ended up cursing the town, saying that there'll be, you know, grass growing in your streets and bats in your, I want to call them bell towers, but he said, I forgot what they're called, but basically bell towers. So like those towers where they house the bells. For some reason, I always pictured chimneys, but but yeah, so there'll be bats and all that stuff. So basically just saying that their town's gonna go to crap. And so apparently I think he stayed in his room And what happened is when Steven Spielberg put his luggage down into the rocking chair that's next to the bed, when he put his luggage down on the rocking chair, it ended up throwing his luggage back at him. And when he ended up staying the night and he woke up to this little boy saying, you know, all dressed up in like, you know, old time clothing, and the little boy was telling Steven Spielberg that his breakfast is ready. That really freaked him out, and he ended up leaving the place. But rumor has it is that it inspired him to make Poltergeist. And it was kind of crazy because I'm wearing this shirt when Jody was talking about that. And what's weird about that also is when we were all standing there, we were standing right next to the Excelsior Hotel. So just the side of the hotel. And there's a street lamp. And it's nighttime, you guys. So we're all standing by the street lamp. And she mentions, I'm not really fully paying attention to what's going on. I was just kind of surveying the area. But I did hear her mention somebody by the name of Catherine. Well, when she mentions Catherine, the street lamp ends up shutting off. And we're just in darkness. And Jody was like, hey, you know, that's weird. She acknowledged that that was weird, that usually doesn't happen, that the street lamp just doesn't turn off and it's nighttime. It only goes off during the day. Well, all of a sudden, you know, once she was done, you know, going over the Excelsior Hotel and we were going to move on to the next spot, everyone was getting ready and we're all walking. I turn and I look at that lamppost, and I was, you know, with a group of other investigators that I met for the very first time. And I turn and I look at that lamppost and I just say, well, I guess that light's not going to come back on. And then all of a sudden the light turned back on. So that was just the craziest thing. And one of the investigators, Adam, actually Carla and Adam, they both turned and they looked at me. And I was just like, oh, Lord. But it was a really cool experience. That was just one of the crazy things that has happened. And besides that, I mentioned to, you know, the group that weird things tend to happen around me when it comes to electronics. And I mentioned that to them when I first met them. So how this all came about is, as you guys know, I have a talk show on Facebook under the Temple of Phoenix Rising's Facebook page. Well, one of the ladies ended up finding me because of my YouTube channel. And so I thought it was really cool that she found me. And then I just started to meet other people part of this network. And one of the guys that I met was Adam, who also lives in Texas as well. And I was a guest on her talk show, on her specific talk show, because she was going to announce me to everyone and introduce me to everyone. And so I was on her talk show for that day. And all of a sudden, I mean, a couple months passed, I'm doing, you know, my little shows and stuff. And I guess one of the ladies that was going to go to Jefferson to do the investigation with Adam and the team ended up, she wasn't able to make it. So since I live in Texas, he asked me if I would like to go, you know, if I would be available, you know, and I thought that was just super cool. And it was my first time ever to investigate with a group of folks that have done it, you know, plenty of times before. This would have been my first investigation with the group, and I was just super excited. I could not say no. So I ended up going there. It was just gonna be for the weekend. They were going there Friday and staying all the way through Sunday, but I couldn't make it that Friday because I had another thing that I had to go to with work. And so, but I could make it there Saturday and spend the night. So I just stayed for one night. They stayed for 2 nights at the Jefferson Hotel. And so when I first met them, when I first arrived, well, I should start it this way. When I was on my way there, I almost got into a car accident. There is a highway that I take. It's kind of like a country road kind of highway, not like your typical highways. And so on my way there, it's like early in the morning. It was probably like 6 or 7, something like that. Probably 7 o'clock because the sun was already coming out. Well, there was this truck. So I'm coming down the road and here's this truck at the stop sign, and he wants to go all the way over to the other side to go the opposite direction. Well, he's sitting there and I'm coming, and then all of a sudden he just decides just to go and not even wait for me, and there's no one behind me. So he goes and I end up in the middle of his truck about to hit him. And then all of a sudden, you know, I slammed on my brakes and I turned my wheel. So I did lose a little bit of control of my car, but I was able to gain it back quick enough that I didn't lose, like spin out of control or anything like that. So when I did gain it back, all I remember is just slow motion, the bed of his truck. I don't know how I ended up from the middle to the bed, but all I remember is just being inches away from hitting the back of his truck, and I did not even hit it. So thank goodness that you know, didn't happen, because I was really looking forward to meeting these folks for the very first time and doing this paranormal investigation. And if I was to hit him, who knows, you know, like I wouldn't, of course I wouldn't be able to make it, but I could have been seriously hurt as well. So I'm so glad nothing happened. But from that moment on, it gets strange, because when I do arrive in Jefferson, I meet the team. So it was Adam, and then Carla, Tony, and Terry, and then myself. And we end up going to brunch together. So while we're, you know, sitting and ordering our food and getting to know each other, I just, you know, happened to mention to them, you know, just a forewarning. And they're like, oh no, you know, because now I'm like bringing out like a warning sign. I told them, you know, just a forewarning, sometimes some weird stuff happens, like with electronics and stuff around me, because I told them about how, like my cell phone, I always have some sort of issue sometimes, you know, with my cell phone. Like my internet might not work, but my husband, who's sitting right next to me, his internet on his phone is perfectly fine, and my phone will say it's 5G, but I just can't get it to like the website that I need to go to or whatever on my cell phone, or some kooky stuff like that. Or at the dentist, when I had to go and get my crown done on one of, yes, I had a root canal, okay? So I had to get a replacement crown, because whenever I was 9 years old, I still had a silver cap on my tooth, so I had to get a replacement. You know, I need to get that fixed, because I shouldn't be having a silver crown in my mouth. So I had to go there to get fitted, you know, so that they can scan my mouth, because nowadays they use a camera to scan your mouth, and then they send it off so that they can, you know, build a crown for you. Back in the old days, they used to use putty and they just make you, you know, stick it in your mouth and make you bite down into the putty so that they can do it that way. Well, this was my third time. Like, I don't know, like the second time I went, the TV in my room didn't work, but everyone else's was fine, and they weren't able to like get it to work. So, but whatever, that's, you know, minor. But then like the third time that I went back to the dentist office, I walk in there and I'm like frustrated, because you know, it's my third time because they can't seem to get the cap. They can't get it deep enough on one end, so they couldn't fit it right with just doing the camera. And they did it like 3 times already, so I'm already frustrated, and I have TMJ, so like my jaw is already hurting, you know? Well, their x-ray machines were down right when I arrived. They couldn't get them up. And they told me I could come back and get it done, but I did not want to come back a 4th time because I've already been coming back and forth, and it was just really frustrating. So I said that I would just sit here and wait till they come back up. Well, you know, a couple hours passed and they had to actually call someone to get the x-ray machines to come back up. They had to get this company to actually bring them back up. So it was the craziest stuff like that. And then, you know, each time they scanned it and they sent it off to the lab for them to build my cap, it just wouldn't fit right, and they didn't do it deep enough, or whatever the case may be. So eventually they just did, you know what, we're just gonna do the old school way and do the putty. And that's what they did. And they sent that to the lab, and then I was able to get my cap. Yeah, so it's just weird stuff like that. And when I was telling them this, the music in the restaurant all of a sudden went staticky for a second. And then all of a sudden something fell on the ground, and we were like looking under the table, and we were like, what's going on? And I pick up this metal little piece, and we don't even know where it came from. I'm gonna, you know, bring a picture of it on the screen so that you guys can see it. Well, coming to find out, that metal piece ends up being a magnet, and and I don't know, we don't even know where it came from. We tried looking at like the bottoms of the chairs, because maybe it like fell off of a chair or the table or something, but we couldn't find exactly where that metal piece came from. And there was stuff on the walls, you know, like little pictures and all that stuff, but we didn't think it came from any of those pictures or anything like that. So it was just the weirdest thing that all of a sudden this magnet just falls, and, you know, and I told him this story, so it's like I'm the magnet. I don't know, it was just really weird. So on the ghost tour, to have that lamp, when Jody, the tour guide, when she mentioned Catherine on the ghost tour, and then that lamp light to go off like that and then to turn back on, it was just the craziest thing. But another instance, you know, I told him about how I almost got into a car accident on my way to meet them. We ended up talking about other weird experiences and stuff like that, and I just happened to tell them that my mom, she was recently in the hospital, but when she went into the hospital in the emergency room, they put her in room 13. Well, the significance of that number is when my grandfather passed away, my parents kept seeing the number 13 pop up everywhere. And I forgot what the significance is of 13 exactly. I don't know if it was the day my grandpa was buried or the day my grandpa passed away, but the number 13 kept popping up everywhere for my parents, and they kept seeing that. Well, and then now my mom's staying in the emergency room, and my dad said that she was in room 13. So, and I was just telling him that. Well, later on that day, and it's Saturday, you guys, because I only stayed for Saturday night. Later on that day, we had a plan to go to, besides, you know, the ghost tour. The ghost tour happened later on at night, but during the day, we also checked out the Grove. And author Mitchell Whittington actually lives there with him and his wife. And his house is known to be haunted. He's an author who wrote a bunch of different books, but this is one of the books that I bought from Jefferson. He has a bunch of books around the different shops around Jefferson that you can purchase. And this one that I bought is Haunted Jefferson, that I need to read more into. I started reading a little bit of his book, but it just goes over the different places in Jefferson that's haunted, including his home that he currently lives at, and he gives tours. I'm gonna post some pictures up of his home, of him taking us to like the different areas of his house, and going over, you know, and explaining all the different areas and all the different encounters and what people have seen, what he has experienced, or family friends, what they've experienced in his home. And also, mostly he would talk about the previous owners of the Grove, the Grove home that he stays at. So it was a really cool experience going there and checking out his house. But what's crazy is when we were all lining up to take a tour of his home, and we were all just staying on the front of his porch, because that's where it starts. The ghost tour starts at his porch. Well, it was supposed to be just 11 of us, but then 2 more folks ended up joining the tour. And guess how many total that was? 13. There was 13 of us. And that was the first tour, the first ghost tour that I've been on with the group at Jefferson Hotel once I arrived. So it was kind of crazy to me because, you know, after I arrived at Jefferson, after that car accident almost happened, and I arrived in Jefferson, I met the team for brunch, and I told them my little stories and stuff, and I told them about how my grandpa's number, for some odd reason, I ended up bringing that up. I don't know why. And then all of a sudden, the first thing that we go do after we eat is check out the Grove, and how there's 13 people on the tour. It was almost like reassuring me that my grandparents are with me, and they wanted me to be there. They wanted me to go on this experience. And so maybe they were protecting me from that car accident. So that was just the craziest thing ever, you guys. So I purchased his book, and inside it is autographed, and it says, enjoy these Jefferson spirits. I can't wait to fully read this. I've only read a little bit of it. It even has pictures inside, you guys. It's very cool. So if you guys are ever in Jefferson, check out the Haunted Jefferson book. You can purchase it at really any store in Jefferson. I've seen them all over the place. Or you can visit, go on a ghost tour at his home, the Grove, and he also has books in his home as well for purchase. Now, going back to the ghost tour, I did record a video of Jody going, explaining the Jefferson Hotel and some of the phenomenon that has happened there. So I'm going to play that video for you guys. And then for the rest of the video, after the tour, I'm going to show some pictures that was taken at the Jefferson Hotel. And some of these pictures were taken before I arrived on Friday, because the owner of the Jefferson Hotel, his name is Jeremy, took Carla, Adam, Tony, and Terry up into the attic on Friday and gave them a tour of the attic and the disappointments room that is up there. And I'll explain what the disappointments room is. But it's very crazy. Tony actually captured some things up in that attic that was very interesting the night before I arrived. But then the day of, when we did the investigation, that's when it got heavy. And at first we thought we weren't going to be able to do an investigation because they ended up having a Halloween party. But it started to quiet down and we were able to catch some things, and it gets heavy. So just a forewarning. But first, let's check out the Historic Jefferson Hotel. And this video is of Jody. She's gonna explain, you know, the history behind the Jefferson Hotel and some of the ghosts that previous guests have experienced there.
This is one location, as I mentioned, that is very open also to talking about their ghost stories. Ghost stories here go back a very long way. There are stories about people seeing and hearing children when there's no children here to actually see or hear. And people often ask me, what do they look like? What are they wearing? What are they doing? And I don't give a lot of information because if someone comes up to me after they've stayed and tells me, hey, we saw the kids, and I'll ask them, really, what were they doing? What did they look like? What were they wearing? I want to see if people are seeing the same thing or people are making this stuff up. So I don't usually disclose a lot of information, but I will tell you now, the little boy does wear a white button-down shirt, suspenders, and he has bright red curly hair. And the reason why I've started disclosing that is because the very first night that Jeremy and Pam spent the night here, he said he put his briefcase down in front of the mirror, in the front of the dresser, and when he kind of raised his head up, in the reflection of the mirror, he sees this kid behind him beside the bed. And of course, when he turns around to look, there's absolutely nothing there. So this is actually a true story. One night when I had guests that had stayed, I came in the next morning and this grumpy little old man spent his front counter. And he said, you're going to have to do something. Somebody's bratty kids kept us up all night. And I said, I am so sorry. I said, why didn't you call me? And he said, well, we knew you weren't on the property. We didn't want to bother you. He said, but we're staying again tonight and I'm not putting up with it. I said, well, good grief, what were they doing? And he said, well, at first it was kid stuff, giggling and running, playing in the hall. He said, I didn't, ignored it. He said, then after we'd gone to bed, he said 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, he said they kept rattling with our, door handle, messing with the door handle. And he said, we knew they were trying to get our attention. He said, they would shake it so hard it'd make the chain on the door rattle. And he said, we were just ignoring them because we knew they wanted us to scream. And he said, my wife had finally had enough, and he said, they were jerking on that door. He said, I jumped up, jerked open the door, and they took off down the hall. So he got dressed. He was going to go down the hallway and wake the parents up and tell them what these kids were doing. And he said when he started down the hallway, he said all the doors are shut. And he's thinking, well, did they run in this one or this one? He couldn't tell exactly what door it was, and they're all shut. He said, I wasn't about to start beating on somebody's door at 4 o'clock in the morning. He said, so I decided to let you handle it. And I said, well, I will, and I am really sorry. I wish you'd called me. And I came around the counter. And at that time, we didn't do our reservations on the computer. We had this huge ledger. And I flopped that big old ledger book open, looked down. This man and his wife were the only 2 people in this whole hotel. It was like a Wednesday night. And I had to look this poor old man in the eye and tell him, sir, I have no idea who or what you were seeing or hearing because there was nobody here but you. One of the most talked about stories here, the oldest story, has always been the story about a jilted bride. And to me, it's one of those stories that you hear about when you have a castle, an old building, a whole hotel, the lady in white, the lady in gray, the jilted bride. These are legend type stories. But I had always been told that in the 1800s, a woman jilted at the altar had killed herself in this hotel. That was always the story. And I worked with the town historian for many, many years, and we did a lot of research, couldn't find anything, and we did assume it was just a legend. Pure dumb luck, we're going through a stack of old newspapers one day and came across the information by accident. And it is a true story. It did not happen in the 1800s. It happened in the early 1900s. Woman's name was Lydia Grigsby. She was here to get married at the Methodist Church. Fiance sent word he had changed his mind, and it states that she came back to the hotel where her family was staying and that she had hung herself in her parents' room. Now you got to remember, early 1900s, that's kind of a slap in the whole family's face. Things were different then, and I guess she was just so distraught she had killed herself. And where it happened, I don't know. Did it happen in the hotel? Yes. We're trying to do some additional research on this. We know the Schluter family has owned this building since it was started in the 1850s as a warehouse. But they are the ones that actually ran it as a hotel from 1901 on up. But this hotel in the late 1800s was known as the Grigsby House Hotel. So I don't know if it's a connection between this girl and the family that owned it at that time, or if it's just a coincidence that her last name was Grigsby. So we're trying to see if there's any other dots that we can connect together. But there is a room that is talked about here more than any other, and that is room 19. It's at the very back of the building on the far right-hand corner. It has the only piece of original furniture left in it, beautiful antique bed called the Bishop's bed. And I can tell you they've renumbered all the rooms in this hotel since they took over, but they kept room 1919. And when I worked here, that bed was in room 12. They moved it from room 12 to room 14, and then it was moved from 14 to 19. Every time that bed is sitting or situated in a room, that is where people talk about a woman showing up at the foot of the bed, the side of the bed. They're always saying it's nothing threatening. I'm thinking, somebody's standing there and ain't supposed to be there. I don't know about y'all, but that's threatening. But they always say her presence is there. People claim to see her. People have said that they've covered her up. And it's, again, kind of a motherly, feeling. It's nothing threatening or scary. But she seems to follow the bed. And now that bed is in 19. It has been there for quite some time. People think she is attached to the bed. Definitely one of the more talked about stories here, but on a scale of 1 to 10, I definitely rate this one out of 10, even though there's a lot of hype here, so I'm sure people's imaginations do get carried away. But the ghost stories here go back a very long way. I've got ghost stories from this building from the 1800s, so it's not something new that's just popped up in the last 20 or 30 years with the popularity of ghost stories. So for all y'all that have to stay here tonight, I don't want to hear anything from you till tomorrow. Don't call me at 3 o'clock in the morning telling me to come get you out of the bed.
Now I'm going to show you guys some pictures that we took while we were staying at the Jefferson Hotel. So when you walk into the Jefferson Hotel, there's a set of stairs to the left, and when you go up the stairs, immediately to the left on the landing is the doll room. And outside of the doll's room is a doll that's locked in a case. And apparently this doll, his name is Eddie, he's very active. If you've ever seen Jeremy, the hotel's owner, he has his own YouTube channel called the Historic Jefferson Hotel, where guests who've stayed at the Jefferson Hotel, as well as himself, have captured some really weird phenomena going on at the Jefferson Hotel. So you guys should check out his YouTube channel if you haven't already. But there's some really crazy footage in there. He has videos of when they did a paranormal investigation of the doll Eddie, and as they're asking questions, the doll ends up just falling forward. And he also has some surveillance footage from inside the hotel of it being inside of Eddie's case, inside of his doll case, and him falling forward in his doll case. And there's nothing in there. There's no wind gust that could reach the doll to knock it over. There's nothing in that case that would trigger him to fall forward, because he's actually sitting back. So it's not like he's on an angle where he could just fall. So it's really, really kind of crazy. And apparently they say that if you look inside the doll case, there's another doll. I took a picture of this doll that's behind me. It's a porcelain doll that's just like sitting, you can see in the picture behind me. It's just sitting behind me, and apparently if you look inside Eddie's case, the doll will turn it, that's behind me, will end up turning its head, and in the reflection you can see it looking at you, which is really freaky. But while I was there, I did not capture that. Or let me know what you guys think. I'll post some pictures of Eddie and see if you can see in the reflection the doll's face. But what's also cool is Carla took a series of pictures of Eddie, and in one of the pictures she captures a dark mass in the corner of the case. And it wasn't like a reflection or anything, because this was inside the case. And I'm going to show you guys that picture, and let me know what you guys think down below. The next set of pictures I'm going to show you guys occurred in the attic of the hotel. When Adam, Carla, Terry, and Tony arrived at the Jefferson Hotel, Jeremy took them up into the attic. And the attic is not open to the public. The ceiling is really low, so you can easily hit your head on one of the rafters. So it is very dangerous up there. You know, attic spaces are usually dangerous, so it's, you know, not open to the public. That's why you see the little red velvet rope over the stairs. But he was kind enough to take them up into the attic and show them the disappointment room and explain the history and all that. And Tony took a couple of pictures while she was in the attic, just the same spot, and what she captured is amazing. So in the first picture, you notice that, there's a couple of chairs up in the attic. As you can see, there's the original roof with the shingles on either side, and then you have the current roof right above the chair. So you can see how low the roof is compared to the chair. So yeah, you do have to crawl basically when you're up there. As they were up there, she took some pictures, and in the second photo, she captured a mist in one of the chairs. And as we zoomed into the picture and we were looking at it, it almost looks like it's a torso and a head. Like someone is actually sitting in one of those chairs. The next set of pictures that I'm going to show you guys occurred next to the disappointments room in the attic. And if you're wondering what a disappointments room is, on the second floor of the Historic Jefferson Hotel, next to the stairs that lead up to the attic, there is a plaque, or should I say it's a picture frame. And on that picture frame, it talks about the disappointments room and what the owner found. And it says, right above room 16 lies a room with a very dark history. A disappointments room. Historically, these rooms were used for parents who had a child with a disability, and they wanted to keep them a secret from the rest of the world. So they hid them away in rooms up on the third floor, which is just unbelievable. At that time in history, some people felt there was shame attached to having a disabled or disfigured family member. So they locked them away from society in such a room. This room was found boarded up in a very strange spot in the attic area by the owner. Not knowing what it was, he had to take the door down as it was boarded up. He thought this was very strange, as the room is only about 6 by 6 and built out of old cedar and square nails, so it's very old. After doing some research, it was found that this room was most likely a disappointment room. And what's crazy is after our investigation at the Jefferson Hotel, Carla ended up going back to Jefferson. And she went back to Jefferson for the Historic Haunts and Legends event in Jefferson. And a couple of her friends ended up going up into the attic, and Jeremy, the owner, showed historical documentation that he recently got and talked about a little boy that was put in the room and not by the hands of his parents. And so, and while I was putting together this YouTube video for everyone, I got that information, and it's really crazy. So we're wanting to eventually go back. But the first picture that I'm going to show you guys before I go on to showing y'all the videos of what we took while we were investigating the attic and the disappointments room is this picture. And as you can see, you'll see Terry, who's on my right hand side, which is your left. She's sitting on part of the original roof where the shingles are, and then you'll be able to see me sitting in one of the chairs. But notice that there's some sort of reddish kind of mist next to my legs, and it's actually kind of stretched out over the entire picture. And I just thought that was really strange. And kind of looking back at this picture on my computer, it almost kind of, I don't know if it looks like this to you guys, but like a fire almost. Or in a circle. It's really kind of interesting. And this is a picture that Adam took using a disposable camera so that he could take some pictures with that while we were investigating. This is also another picture that Adam took while staying in room 15. Room 15 is the train room at the Historic Jefferson Hotel, and Adam had some weird experiences while he stayed in this room. He ended up not staying the night on Saturday night. in his own room because of some of the occurrences that happened when he went into his room, and he left this light switch on when he left his room, and then when he came back to his room he noticed that the lights were turned off. However, the light switch was still on, so he thought that was kind of strange, so he turned his light switch to off, but then all of a sudden the lights in his room started going on and off, just flickering on and off. And so he was just like, nope, I'm out of here, and he ended up going into our room and staying with us. So what's really cool about this picture is it looks like he captured orbs. Do you guys see the little round circles? Very interesting. Now stay tuned for part 2, where I show you guys the footage that we took while investigating the attic of the Historic Jefferson Hotel. Thanks for joining, you guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.